Okay, we're going to have 4 segments of our program today. Introductory remarks will be 3 minutes. Then we're going to have 2 30-second lightning rounds. I'll explain what those are when we get to that part of the program. And then at the end, we're going to have 90 seconds each for closing remarks. Okay, and now for the introductory remarks. Candidates, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, why you think we should vote for you. Our first one up will be Tom Fox.
Good morning, or afternoon now, I guess, I'm sorry. My name is Tom Fox. I'm a lawyer by profession. I've been working in business. I was a deputy public defender here in Los Angeles County, and I've had my own private practice now for over 25 years. People come to me at usually the worst part of their lives. And it's my job to listen to them, try to untangle the mess that they're in, craft a solution, and send them out into the world doing a little bit better and hoping for a better day. I've had these skills now honed for the last 30 years, and I believe these are the same kinds of skills that I can use to represent the people of the 33rd District and U.S. House of Representatives. I'm not a politician. I never wanted to be. But as a citizen, just like you, I am tired of the way things have been going in Washington. I'm running as an independent by choice because I believe that the two-party system that we're involved in, that the hallmark of our democracy, is broken right now. And an independent voice is probably best equipped to go through and to break through the logjam which is in Washington. If we had an even playing field, then I believe things would be working better in Washington. But there's sinister forces in effect in that money buys legislation, money buys votes, and money buys influence. And that's not good for us Americans. There are many issues that we need to deal with on the immediate level. We need an income tax code that is fair, that spreads the burden out fairly among all of us. We need to concentrate on our environment. We're burning fossil fuels continually, even though we know they're bad for us. We need to be thinking forward in terms of our energy policies. We need immigration reform. We have an antiquated immigration system. We need to do things on an immediate level, but we've been blocked by Congress that won't even speak to one another. So we need to ask ourselves, what kind of country do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a country that is defined by war? I don't. Do we want to live in a country that condones torture? I don't. I want to live in a country that celebrates its citizenry, that lives up to its creed of a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. I hope you'll join me. My name is Tom Fox. Thank you.
Next up, Ted Lieu.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm going to tell you my story, and it's a story that's similar to millions of Americans. I'm an immigrant, and I was thinking when my parents looked at a map of America, they could have picked beautiful Southern California or Hawaii. They picked Cleveland, Ohio. So that's where I grew up. And we started off in the basement of a person's home. We were poor, we did not speak English well, and it was cold. They would go to flea markets and sell gifts and jewelry to make ends meet. Did that for several years, saved some money, opened one gift and jewelry store in the shopping center, worked hard, saved some more money, opened one gift and jewelry store in the shopping mall, and then my brother and I would help watch that store. He eventually opened 6 stores. And so in my mind, my parents achieved the American dream. They went from being poor to a home, gave my brother and I an amazing education. And it's one of the reasons I joined the U.S. Air Force on active duty. I believe I can never give back to America, everything this amazing country has given to me and to my family. One reason I choose to remain in the reserves. I'm a lieutenant colonel at LA Air Force Base in the district. And it's one reason that I am in politics. Make sure that this dream remains open for people who want to work hard and succeed. After active duty Air Force, I worked in the private sector as a lawyer and then in the financial services industry. Elected to the City Council in 2002, the Assembly 2005, and the Senate in 2011, and I have a record. And the record shows I've taken on powerful interests on behalf of my constituents to get things done. After Wall Street's abuses nearly collapsed our economy, I authored comprehensive subprime mortgage reform in California. After 3 tries, got it signed into law by a Republican governor. I took on the indoor tanning industry because indoor UV tanning kills you, causes skin cancer. Banned it for people under 18. That law has now been replicated by the states of Vermont and Texas. I took on our own pension funds. I was a principal co-author of the law that divests California's pension funds from Iran's nuclear and energy industries. And I took on those people who wanted to harm our children. I banned the harmful practice of gay conversion therapy for minors. That law has now been introduced in 8 other states, recently signed in New Jersey. And that's the kind of member of Congress I will be. I will fight for my constituents, take on powerful interests, and get things done. We'll be honored to have your support. Thank you so much.
Lily Galani.
Thank you, Rabbi Feinstein. Thank you for providing this wonderful venue, and Brentwood News for organizing this event. And thank you for being here. As a mother of 2, I know how difficult it is to be here on a Sunday afternoon. I'm sure a lot of you had to juggle things to be here, and many of you have traveled probably some distances to be here. And I too have traveled a long way to be here and to stand before you. My family and I arrived in LAX about over 30 years ago. We left a country where it was ruled by tyranny, and we left everything behind and started all over here. And thanks to the limitless opportunities that this country provides and to the bounties of freedom that this country stands for, I made it all the way to Harvard Law School, and it was tough, but as our family was committed, we were pursuing these dreams. And the reason I'm running and the reason I'm standing before you today is because I want those same opportunities to be available to my children who are sitting here in the audience. I've been a practicing lawyer for over 23 years, and 14 years of that I've been a business owner. My husband's a faculty member at UCLA, and together we started a website, which is a for public information, a public awareness website, and it's called sleepsolutiondoctors.com. We have 16,000 members, and we provide information at no cost to individuals to raise public awareness for sleep. I also started buzzcounsel.com, which is a directory for lawyers, and we're implementing immediate appointment setting and video conferencing so that law will be accessible to everyone easily and quickly. And these were all possible because of the wonderful opportunities that are available here in this country that unfortunately I see we are on a path that we may no longer be able to enjoy. Our children, if we continue with the same policies that this district has had for the last 40 years, and the nation will be lucky, the nation over the past 8 years, will be lucky if they're able to hold on to 20% of what they earn. As I understand it, this race is about who can bring jobs back to California and stop businesses fleeing California. And because of my experience as a lawyer, as a business owner, I know how to get that done. Thank you so much.
Mark Matthew Hurd.
Mark Matthew Hurd. I'm from Westwood. I was born in Santa Monica. Mark Matthew Hurd. Yes, it's Mark Matthew Hurd, H-E-R-D. My website is voteherd.com, H-E-R-D.com. If you all read the LA Times' article on the race this morning, you probably know by now I don't exist. But Mary Ann does, although I'd seen better pictures. Ted does, Wendy does, and another guy who raised $800,000. And of course, Elon Carr, a Republican, a great Republican candidate if you're a Republican. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a libertarian. I believe in the Constitution. I don't believe in NSA spying. I don't like Bush, and I don't like Obama. That's why I decided if I'm going to run as a libertarian. We care about the Constitution. Now, I know a lot of you think, oh, he's probably a Tea Party. He's probably this. He's probably that. No. I was a Republican once, and I was a Democrat once. So I'm a lot like you. The only difference is I looked in the mirror the other day and I said, I need to make a change. And I did. I switched. I could have gone independent. I thought about independent. But I fell in love with Ron Paul. I started listening to what he ran on when he ran for president. We need less government. We need to reduce our defense spending by about 10 to 15%. We need to quit nation building and start nation building here at home. We need to bring our troops home. We need to label GMOs. And for crying out loud, we need to quit spying on ourselves. I mean, I was married once. It does add a little kinkiness to it. No, it's wrong. And I, believe it or not, I was going to get behind Marianne Williamson. Thank you guys for showing up tonight. She's a great candidate. Everything she speaks about, I believe in. Okay, there was only one problem with Marianne's candidacy. I called them before I decided to get in this race. I said, wow, finally, there's going to be a good candidate in this race. Somebody who's not Democrat, somebody who's not going to spend 40% of our budget, national budget, on military spending, defense. And I didn't get a return phone call. This is not a lie. I did not get a return phone call. I sent an email, didn't get a return phone call. So I ran. Now, I got 10 seconds left. So let me tell you who I am. I was born in Santa Monica at St. John's Hospital. Grew up in Westwood, went to Harvard Westlake, Uni. I'm the local guy in this race. I started the Westwood Neighborhood Council. 5 attempts failed. I didn't give up. I got elected to that council. Even though they hated me, I still got elected. It was the #1 neighborhood council in the city of Los Angeles our first year. I'll tell you more in a minute.
Michael Ian Sachs.
Very passionate, love that. My name's Michael Ian Sachs, Green Party candidate. I'm sure you've all heard of me. Yeah, figured. I'd like to thank Jeff Hall, Brentwood News, University Synagogue, Mirror Media Group for sponsoring this, hosting this event. And a beautiful building, very spiritual, very beautiful place to have this. Thank you. I'm a Green Party candidate. A little bit about me. I was born in Chicago, way back in '63. Went to high school in Davenport, Iowa, right on the Mississippi River. Lived in Denver for a little bit, went to school at the University of Iowa. Came to LA in 1987. I've worked in El Segundo for 25 years. I've lived in El Segundo, I've lived in Hawthorne, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach. I currently reside in Redondo Beach, have been there for the last 10 years, with my adorable wife and very tolerant wife. We've had a great time there. I love this district. It's a beautiful place. They carved it out quite well. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. We're lucky to be here. The theme of my campaign is the two-party system is broken. And you've heard that before. You're going to keep hearing it. And that doesn't reflect on any of the Democrats and Republicans up here. They're all good people. They're trying to do the best thing. But we know the system isn't working the way things are going in Congress right now. They're not able to agree on the issues. They're not able to offer amendments. The process is broken down. Sending a Democrat there in a Republican-controlled Congress right now is not going to get anything done. They have no power. So I did an interview a couple months ago for the LA Times on the Hermosa Beach Pier. It was a beautiful venue. They were happy to get out of the office and see that. Beautiful view there. You can see the whole district there. And at the end, the producer and journalist said that I was someone different, that I offered a different view. So since then, my slogan has been, it's time for something different. Einstein defined insanity as trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's time for something different. Look forward to chatting with you. It's great to be here.
Vince Flair.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Vince Flaherty. I think I have tenure here because I came here when I was 4 years old. My father was from Washington. He was a syndicated columnist, national columnist, who got his first job working for Franklin Roosevelt, and a job that lasted through articles on all of the cabinet. In Second World War, he traveled, he lived with each of the commanding generals in their respective theaters of combat. He was also a friend of President Kennedy and a speechwriter for him, and I got to tag along with him on the campaign trail when I was a kid. I was so inspired that I wanted to become a public servant. But not having the money that Kennedy had to avoid the compromises other politicians have to make, I pursued other vocations in the hope that one day, if I had enough money, the political machine would let me in so I could do some good. But like many whose dreams were broken with the murder of the president, my father died in '77. And more than once, I became educated in how to live on the streets with no friend or acquaintance, no to favor me in Big Brother's glossy international establishment. Meanwhile, I took political science courses. I've always followed public policy developments. I've been a real estate broker, a member of the Pacific Palisades Community Council, the president, lifetime director of the Palisades Historical Society. I've produced 8 movies. I've been a political journalist. I write for many years under the byline of the bipartisan political examiner for theexaminer.com. And I've built 8 houses. And I've done all of these things right here in District 33. Now I'm requesting your vote so I can become a citizen legislator. I want you to know that I was offered PAC money and I turned it down. Of course, they didn't offer me that much, but even if they had, I would have refused it. Because we need to get international and special interest money out of elections. We have the right to complete disclosure of who's behind campaign contributions and the financiers of political propaganda. We need to pass laws such as SB 52 to require that the real names of those paying for political ads be displayed in the ads themselves, not just Citizens for Liberty or, things like that. So while this venue isn't given enough time to talk about all the reforms that need to be done, I've identified over the years 434 key areas that are in dire need of reform. And I'll talk to you a little bit more at the closing about that. Thank you.
Zain Obaji.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Brentwood News, for putting this on, and thank you all for being here. I'll come down here and level with all y'all. I'm Zain Obaji Jr. I'm the only candidate from all these candidates who actually ran for this office 2 years ago as well. And the reason that I ran for this office 2 years ago is because at the age of 28, I felt as though our government and our representatives in Congress were not doing enough to represent the young Americans who are either underemployed, unemployed, and losing touch and losing grasp of the American dream. My dad immigrated to this country from Syria. He immigrated, he joined the US Navy, he worked hard, he went on to achieve the American dream. and that inured to our benefit. We got a great education growing up as kids. So I saw young Americans losing the possibility of attaining the American dream, and I said, I got to do something about that. I didn't think I could unseat Representative Waxman. I didn't even come close. But I got to have a voice in that conversation, and I got to hear from voters about what mattered to you. I run again because when Representative Waxman retired, he issued a statement. In that statement, he said, ideally, my successor will be somebody young enough to make the long-term commitment required for legislative success. At age 30, I am the candidate who is young enough to make the commitment required for legislative success. Now, I didn't just come out of nowhere. I got my undergraduate degree at UC Berkeley. I got my law degree at USC. I have since, in my practice of law, represented an African-American autistic student fighting for him for a free and appropriate public education, which I believe that every student in the state of California should be entitled to on an equal basis, notwithstanding whether they're from a poor community or for a rich community. And if we can't get that done here in the state of California, how do we expect the rest of the United States to get our students a good education? How do we expect the young generation of Americans to compete in the global economy? So we need to lead on that front. I believe in immigration reform. We here in California, especially with our huge agricultural economy, we rely on immigrant labor for our food. We eat food that came from the hands of people here who do not have legal status. And what does that mean? When they don't have legal status, they can't go back and forth freely. They can't even fight for a minimum wage if they're not earning a minimum wage. They don't get the lunch break. They don't get the 10-minute rest break. And so it's time to do the humane and dignified thing, and we need real immigration reform and somebody who can work across the aisle. Because some folks here have experience working with other Democrats, but it's a different ballgame in Washington, D.C. And finally, I'm an environmental activist. I encourage you to look up and look into the Redondo Beach power plant. But there's folks here who've had an opportunity to lead on that issue, and they haven't. Zane Obaji, I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Brent Roske.
Hi, everybody. So let's imagine that we're not at a candidate forum today. Just for a minute, let's imagine that we're at the first meeting of the Congressional District Council. The Congressional District Council, what is that, do you ask? Well, I'll tell you. The Congressional District Council is one of the ideas I'd like to implement if you elect me to Congress. The Congressional District Council would be made up of myself and these wonderful patriots. Now, I haven't asked any of them whether or not they do it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The Congressional District Council is all about working together. See, we'd basically create a mini House of Representatives right here in California. We'd talk about upcoming legislation. We'd talk about upcoming votes. We'd come up with a plan of action, and I would take that vote back to D.C. You see, we've been taught that people on the other side of the political spectrum for us are our enemies, and that has to stop. The adversarial nature of modern politics has to end. That's why I'm running as an independent. See, I'm what you call the squishy middle. I'm the mushy middle. Now, if you saw the New York Times story that came out this morning, they had a little bit of fun with us, right? New York loves to get snarky about Los Angeles. I think that's because they actually all wish they lived here, but that's beside the article talks a lot about Marianne's campaign and myself. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Marianne and I both offer a lot of California color, I think is what they call it. I'm a writer-director. I live on a sailboat, for goodness sakes. But maybe another reason that I got a little bit more ink in the article is that it's the New York Times. So they weren't looking at my ad buy and making editorial decisions. See, I'm running a virtually no-money campaign. Now, on the stage is a group of patriots, but they have raised almost $4 million to run in this primary. I've spent about $1,200. Doesn't mean I don't want to win. I do want to win. But if you, like me, think that we have to get money out of politics, it has to start somewhere, and that starts with campaigning. See, I don't believe you should need millions or have to be a millionaire to run for Congress. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. I think the founders of our country created this job, the job of representative, to be a mirror of the people from the district. And I'm a writer-director, so I fit the bill. Now, getting Congress to work together it's an almost impossible task. But something we forget sometimes is that we're all actually on the same team. We're all actually Americans first, aren't we? And Americans, we get the tough jobs done. We stormed the beaches, we liberated the camps. 30 seconds, okay. And when the task is great enough, we figure out a way to work together and get the job done. That's what the Congressional District Council is about. I have a couple other ideas that I'm going to bring up a little later, but if we can start working together here, then those ripples of cooperation will hopefully find their way to the House of Representatives. I'm Brent Roske. I'm running as an independent. I hope I get your vote on June 3rd. Thank you very much.
Kevin Modis.
Hi, my name's Kevin Modis, and my number one priority is to address our terrible transportation system. You cannot have economic growth without the infrastructure to support it. Ask any business person this, and they know it's the truth. And all the excuses that elected officials have made are just that, excuses, and they need to end. We need more double-level freeways. We need more subways. We need more light rail. We need more buses. We need more of everything, because the lack of transportation is choking our businesses, cutting off our communities, and it's unacceptable. My other issue is all environmental issues, but one in particular, the most pervasive and threatening one at this point, is the radio frequency radiation emitted by wireless devices and infrastructure. The World Health Organization, after reviewing studies from all over the world, have declared that the microwaves used in wireless is a Class 2B carcinogen. And what that means is we can no longer say this technology is safe. Belgium has gone ahead and banned cell phones from children due to health effects. The Italian Supreme Court has found that cell phones cause cancer. Europe is acting to protect their population. They're acting to minimize exposure. In our country, they're acting to maximize exposure. And this is unacceptable. If you look at what's going on out there, we're now increasing Wi-Fi, we're increasing wireless in the smart meters, we're increasing cell phone exposure, and we're increasing people's radio frequency exposure at the same time. It is no exaggeration to say that we're being used as a gigantic human experiment into the long-term effects of radio frequency radiation. Right now, Jim Kelly, the quarterback, NFL quarterback, is dying from a tumor on his jaw. Vice President Biden's own son, 44 years old, had a brain tumor removed from behind his ear, the most common place from having cell phone exposure. LeBron James had a huge tumor removed from his cheek. And most people don't know about that because it speaks to the power of the wireless industry to control information regarding this issue. This is unacceptable. I want you to vote for me and help me get elected, because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold hearings, and I'm going to hold the wireless industry accountable for the people they've already caused pain and suffering. I'm going to reintroduce the cell phone right to know bill that was introduced in 2012, August 2012. And I'm going to demand that we warn our population about this carcinogenic agent. I'm also going to demand that they develop biologically based safety standards to protect your children, your family, and you. People really are getting sick from this technology. Please vote for Kevin Modis. Thank you.
Okay, Kelsey and Brenton, if you would collect all the questions that might be floating around out there and deliver them to Gail, that would be great. Okay, Wendy Gruhl.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Rabbi Feinstein and the Brentwood News and all of you for being here today. This is an important race. Henry Waxman served this community for 40 years. I just saw him at an event. He was being honored by the Stonewall Democratic Club for his leadership and stepping up to the plate on the issues of clean air and clean water, of taking on the tobacco industry, of introducing the Ryan White Care Act, and being someone who made sure that we have generic drugs available to us at a lower cost. He was a fighter for our families. These are going to be difficult shoes to fill, although I say I'm going to try to fill them with high heels, just a little bit different. But when you think about, people think about Congress today and that it's broken, an 18% approval rating. People say, boy, that's higher than I thought. But it's important to face the issues that all of us see each and every day. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I've done and what I want to do most importantly. I'm proud. I've grown up in Los Angeles. My father was from Los Angeles, and my parents taught me that you can do anything you want to do, but that you're here on this earth to make a difference. So when I went to work for Tom Bradley, I was so proud that one of the issues I got to work on was homeless veterans. It is criminal that any of our veterans would be homeless, and work to have a program, a nonprofit that operates today on the VA for homeless veterans. That is the important issue of quality education. And the fact is that it shouldn't depend on your zip code what kind of education you get. And that I helped create a landmark, wonderful, nationwide model called LA's Best After School Program. But it was also about being city controller and the fact of taking on those, yes, untested rape kits, that backlog, and saying that's not good enough, that any rape kit was not tested. To make sure that we preserved our open space and preserved more than 1,200 acres, or to make sure that we address the issue of the middle class and creating good jobs in Los Angeles. I was the architect of business tax reform, and as a small business owner, I understand the importance of those small businesses to this region, and an entertainment industry that's our signature industry. When I go to Washington, I'm going to use my experience of working for the Clinton administration at HUD, where I not only was the deputy director of the Interagency Council on the Homeless, but after the '94 earthquake, helped bring $1 billion to this region to make sure we rebuilt the many things that needed to be built, whether it be housing or, yes, the 10 freeway. It's about our environment. Our environment is not just about our future for our children, and I want my 11-year-old to be able to breathe the air that we have here, but it also is about making sure that we deal with the issue of fracking and that we have a moratorium on fracking in our communities. It's about making sure that we close the Halliburton loophole on the EPA, that they can actually be able to say what you're putting into our water. It's about making sure that we fight for our communities and have better housing. It's making sure that women don't make 77 cents on the dollar and that they have the right to choose. And it's about being a fighter and a doer. I'm going to be that fighter and doer. I'm going to take the experiences I've had throughout my life and make sure that my mom knows up there that I'm doing what I can to make this world a better place. I ask for your vote. Wendy Grohl for Congress. Thank you.
David Knuth.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. You're going to hear that verb often in this race, a fighter. And you just heard a fighter and a doer. I think ultimately what you all want, what I have wanted, is a doer. And that verb, fight, is so often what has caused nothing to get done in Washington. That 18% approval rating you just heard isn't because 82% of the people are so upset about what's getting done, about the legislation that's being enacted. It's that nothing is getting done. I have a history of getting things done. That's what I want to do in Washington. When I moved out here after college, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I moved out here in 1999. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the inception and growth of 2 small businesses. I, like many people on this stage at the end of January, I'm not a politician. I did not have a team set up. I was as surprised as anybody when Henry Waxman announced his retirement. Yet, I was able to insert myself in this race, to make sure you couldn't talk about this race without talking about me in 2 months. And I had nothing set up to do that. An analogy I like to make, I was a public defender for almost 7 years. And I got things done there in a scenario that I think is very similar to the scenario that whoever wins this race is going to be facing when they go into Congress. They're going to be a freshman. They could be in the minority party. As a public defender, I was always in the minority party. I was always the second least popular person in the courtroom. But what I found was that over time, if you demonstrate your passion, if you demonstrate your desire to work hard, to show up early, to stay late, to, when need be, go to trial, you find that you ultimately, and Elon will be able to tell you the same, we took the same elevators. We parked in the same parking lot. We buy coffee in the same snack shop. at 210 West Temple Street, which is where I spent the majority of my time as a public defender. And over time, what happens is you earn credibility, you earn respect. And where things couldn't happen before, when things couldn't be done before, they start getting done. It seems like a zero-sum game between a public defender and a prosecutor when it starts. But at the end of the day, it may not happen in the first week, it may not happen in the first month. But ultimately, what happens is you earn credibility, respect, and things start to happen. And if you don't believe that can still happen in Washington, D.C., then we're just in big trouble and we should all give up. But there are 435 human beings in that building, and who we send there needs to be able to persuade, needs to demonstrate passion, they need to get things done. I asked for your vote in June, and I asked for it again in November. My name's David Knuth. Thank you very much.
We're a good team, I'd say. Yeah. Ilan Carr.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Jeff, TJ, thanks for putting this amazing event together. Great work. And Rabbi Feinstein and President Silverman of University Synagogue, thank you for opening your home to us. I'd like to also thank one more very special person. My wife is here, and that's especially significant because she's due with our third child in 4 days. 4 days. So if I have to run out of here in the middle, that's why. Look, since we are in a synagogue, I want to begin with something that was read in every synagogue across the world yesterday, just yesterday, from a scroll just like that. A commandment that says, love your fellow as you love yourself. That was read just yesterday, the Hafta l'reacha kamocha in the original language. And I want to begin with that because our country, ladies and gentlemen, is dangerously polarized today. Dangerously polarized. And that polarization, that fragmentation is on tragic display in our nation's capital. And Congress has fallen into a state of dysfunction that frankly is disgraceful, and we deserve better. And so I'm running for Congress to reach across the aisle, to put issues ahead of partisanship and labels, and to craft solutions with my colleagues, real solutions to the real problems afflicting Americans every day, across the 33rd District, across California, and across our country. And it's for that child and my children that I'm running for a better future. So a little about me. I have, in every opportunity, in every point in my career, stood up to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, the most vulnerable in our society. Before 9/11, I joined the U.S. Army. And after 9/11, I volunteered to deploy, and I spent a year in Iraq. I led an anti-terrorism team in missions throughout the country, life-saving missions. And then I prosecuted terrorists who hurt our American soldiers, prosecuted them and put them behind bars. And then when I got back to LA, I joined the district attorney's office, and I became a prosecutor of gangs, a criminal gang prosecutor, prosecuting some of the worst and violent offenders that put us in danger every day across our country. I've prosecuted murders and attempted murder on police officers, but I've also prosecuted another kind of predator. I've done many, many cases of domestic violence, prosecuting those who would endanger and prey upon the ones they should most treasure in their lives. And I'm also one of the few specially designated animal cruelty prosecutors in LA County because every victim deserves a voice. And so I'm going to go to Washington to fight and to bring the issues that really affect us so we have a better future, better schools for our children, and that's our best and most important asset. And when our children graduate, they need an economy that's growing and will give them jobs, and a healthcare system that works, and American leadership overseas. All of those things is why I'm in this race. Ilan Carr, I thank you for your time and for being here today.
Matt Miller.
So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Rabbi. So a rabbi and 18 candidates walk into a bar. I tried to think of a way to end that joke. I couldn't come up with it. Although as a Jewish Democrat in this race, I'm very familiar with giving out multiples of 18 for bar mitzvah gifts. I think 18 candidates on a ballot may be taking l'chaim a bit too far. Let me take my time to suggest how I'm different from the other candidates and my colleagues in this race, and why that difference matters for the change that we need out of Washington. Many people know me from KCRW's Left, Right, and Center, and I've been proud to be on that, based in Santa Monica for 20 years. And I've lived in the district for 18 years. What some folks may not know is I'm the only candidate in this race who worked in a senior economic policy position in the Clinton White House. I was a senior advisor at the White House Office of Management and Budget, where I helped President Clinton put the country on a path to a balanced budget while investing in people and creating a framework that led to millions of new jobs. I'm the only one in the race who has advised Fortune 500 companies and entrepreneurs. So I get business, I'm married to an entrepreneur, I understand business, I think that matters. I'm the only one who has led in education. I serve on the board of the Partnership for LA Schools, which is overseeing about 17 of the toughest schools in downtown LA. I'm proud to say that in the last 5 years, they've led the state in terms of school improvement. Still a long way to go, but going in the right direction. Arne Duncan, Barack Obama's Secretary of Education, appointed me to serve on the Equity and Excellence Commission, which a few months ago issued a blueprint on how we can get a much more ambitious direction going for our schools in the next decade and beyond. I'm the only candidate who has written books on where we need to go on schools, a living wage, climate change, the economy, healthcare costs, and more, that have been read and praised by people like Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Paul Krugman, and Bill Bradley. And I'm the only leading Democrat in the race who has not spent a career running for public office, which means I have not spent years funding my campaigns with money from the special interest in industries that I would regulate. And also I think that I bring fresh energy and a willingness to shake things up, which I think is what we need. Now, why do these things matter? I think it gives me the ability to offer a better brand of leadership. Elizabeth Warren did not emerge from a state legislature or from City Hall. She was a passionate advocate for the way the middle class was getting the shaft. She was an authority and professor who wrote books and beat the drum from outside, and when the moment came, when she got the platform to raise her voice, she had the power to move the conversation. I believe my experience and chops position me in the same way to be not just a vote, but a leader. I'd like your vote. Thank you.
Michael Shapiro.
Thank you for having us here today. These types of meetings and forums are extremely important in a democracy. We have a democracy, but it doesn't really run like a democracy. It doesn't run like a democracy because of the Koch brothers. It doesn't run like a democracy because of people in Congress who don't have the courage to stand up, to speak out, to make sense of a simple situation. I ran for this district 42 years ago. I was the youngest person in the history of the United States to be nominated for the United States House of Representatives. I learned from the best. I worked for Bobby Kennedy. I worked for Alan Cranston. I worked for Ted Kennedy. I was instrumental in building the hospital on Wilshire in the 405 when I was a boy, because I cared and I knew how to analyze and how to think and how to debate. I helped defeat Nixon's 2 Supreme Court nominees that were members of the Ku Klux Klan, Clement Haynsworth and Harold Carswell. I went to college and I worked with 2 kids that became United States senators, Mark and Tom Udall. They were my roommates. Their fathers, Mo and Stuart, would drag me to meet Ralph Nader and Scotty Reston, the publisher of the New York Times, and Brezhnev and Kosygin, because I loved politics, and their sons were taught by their mothers to hate politics. And they became politicians because they tagged along, and that's what Stuart and Mo knew they would do. I've been thinking about this district when Henry represented it in Fairfax. When it wasn't the 33rd, it was the 28th. I lost because McGovern conceded too early, and most people then went home to watch the results and didn't go vote. Harry Truman won the presidency because he won California by 1 precinct
and he won that precinct by 1 vote. More important than any of these people and any of their ideas are you people working, and this is not the simple end of it. Working vigilantly to retake the House of Representatives with decent Republicans and decent Democrats. Independents can't win yet. They will be at the low rung of the totem pole. They will never get a voice in either party. They will not caucus because the Republicans and Democrats will not trust them. My family came to America in 1632 and helped start the American Revolution, and that is still in my blood. ShapiroForCongress.com.
Barbara Mulvaney.
The last time I was in this synagogue was 30 years ago when I dropped off my daughter for preschool. It's such a delight to be here. It's such a delight to be here. It's been 30 years, and I now have 3 daughters that have been bat mitzvahed. I am a proud mother. But in those 30 years, I've had an incredible life, and I've worked very hard in public service. And I want to share with you my background, because I think it's important when you go to vote for your next representative that you look for the most qualified person and pick the person that you want to represent you. When my daughter was going to preschool here, I was working for the district attorney's office. I worked for the LADA's office in Malibu, Santa Monica, Westwood, and Sylmar. But after that, I went and worked for Janet Reno in Miami. And in Miami, we started the first domestic violence task force unit in the country. And it was an amazing experience, and we worked diligently on women's issues. It was a cutting-edge unit. And from there, I went to work for Tom Udall. I was an assistant attorney general, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And there, again, I worked on women's issues. I was the director of the Prosecutions and Special Investigations Unit, which primarily focused on public corruption, but we also did other issues. And we had a year-long program on women's issues where we set up the legislative platform using town hall meetings around the state. I'm very proud of that work, but there I also did public corruption. I tried a bank fraud case, so to Elizabeth Warren, I did try the bankers, and I convicted them. But after that, I went overseas and I worked for the United Nations, and I was a senior prosecutor on the Rwandan genocide. I prosecuted the military masterminds. It took 6 years, but I convicted them of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and rape. So I have done gang prosecutions. I have done genocide prosecutions. I have done war crimes, crimes against humanity. But I also went to war. I was in Baghdad for 2 years. I first went in 2007, worked with the Saddam court, then I worked on women's issues again in Iraq. I would appreciate your consideration. I have an amazing background. It's Barbara Mulvaney for Congress.com. Thank you.
Christy Holmes.
Wow, I cannot wait to see how this vote turns out. This is a group. I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm really excited. I'm lucky to have met this group of people, and I hope to work with them in the future. Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Holmes. Thank you for having me and for being democratic by including all of us in today's forum. I'm a social worker. I'm a social worker who teaches at USC and an NGO delegate to the UN Commission Status on Women. If you're on Twitter, you can follow me at Dr. Christie. I'm married to Josh, who's an ultra runner, and we have 2 beautiful children. There are 3 issues that are personal for me, and they're going to be a priority. I believe that we need quotas for women on the ballot as an economic imperative. At a recent UN anti-corruption session, the US was discussed as ranking behind countries like Afghanistan, China, Cuba, and Iraq. This affects a global view of us on the world stage and puts us somewhere around 80th place in the world. The data is clear. When women are in leadership, we are more prosperous in our country and legislate 33% more effectively. We're 51% of the population, but 17% of Congress. At this rate, we'll reach parity in about 100 to 500 years. This is not a woman's issue. It's an economic issue, as well as a global leadership issue. Look, we all have a lot of education and ability up here. You've already heard it. We can all write things in academic or legalese that no one can understand. All of us can acronym you to death. But who has follow-through courage? Who's going to stand up here and say, why are we doing this? This is wrong. We woke up this morning to yet another elected official indictment for fundraising fraud. I'm talking about getting the money out. We all say we want to get the money out of politics because it corrupts us in this whole process, while promoting with the media who's raised the most money. We continue to grind stories out about a sole criteria in this race, while generally ignoring actual job qualifications, past or present. I'm tired of hearing, honey, this is how it's done. Honey, this is how it works every time. Honey, why don't you just run for the school board? I don't want to hear that any candidate in this race lacks experience. At what? We are to represent the people, not obnoxiously educated people who flush millions of dollars down the toilet from printing postcards. No one wants it anyway. But we go on ignoring what voters want. If I'm elected to Congress, my job is to be the voice of the district and represent all of my district, not just a Democratic Party at 43%, Republicans at 27%, and the 30% of us who don't really associate with anyone. The Princeton study tells us something we feared. The people's opinion has no impact on policy. Congress already has 435 people with legislative experience. This doesn't make them a good representative of the district, nor does it show them that they work well with others. Thank you. Christy Holmes for Congress.
Marianne Williamson.
Thank you very, very much. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Brentwood News. Thank you to all of my fellow candidates up here. This is an extraordinary privilege that we all have as Americans. Of all the things that have been stated here today, everyone who has spoken, there was something they talked about that I would say, wow, I agree with that. But the moment that for me was the most powerful and the most important was when Ted spoke about congressional hearings about cell phones. It wasn't because of cell phones that I was particularly moved more than other subjects. I was moved because in that moment, we all became very mature adults in this room. You could feel it in the room. Everything got more sober. Everything got more mature. Everything got more adult. We stopped being somewhat silly, and we became very real in that moment, and we all acknowledged in our own way that real people are suffering and real people are dying because of the reckless and irresponsible policies of the United States of America. And that is where we need to be. That is where we need to be, ladies and gentlemen. This is a sobering moment in American history if we allow ourselves to look honestly. I believe we are going through nothing short of the de-democratization of the United States of America. Over the last few decades, we have siphoned off so many of the material resources of our country into the hands of a very few, through banking policies, through trade policies, and through tax policies. And now added to that, the extraordinarily reckless and sinister McCutcheon and Citizens United Supreme Court decisions, by which members of our Supreme Court seem completely focused on putting the nails in the coffin of American democracy. At this point, moneyed forces wield an influence on the functioning of our government that is so disproportionate to the influence that is wielded by the average citizen as to represent nothing short of the de-democratization, the dismantling of democracy itself. You don't just make a mockery of the Gettysburg Address and not mention it. We need a people's interruption. I agree with the other independent candidates and independent voices here today who have pointed out that looking to the political status quo to fix this problem is ridiculous. The political status quo is the problem. And what we need in the United States in order to deeply address the fact that 1% controls up to 40% of the wealth, and that 60% lives on 2.3% of the wealth, and that we have the second highest child poverty rate, and that we have the highest mass incarceration rate, and we have children who don't go to preschool who, when they do go, if they're not caught up on their reading, are on a 50% probability track to incarceration by the second grade, is a people's movement, an interruption, a pattern interruption that can only be brought about by people, not by the traditional status quo, not by the political parties as they now exist, and not those who take corporate PAC money, but by those of us, which means the majority of the people of the United States who are ready to say, as has not been said in this country for a long time, ladies and gentlemen, we've had enough. I've had enough. Send me to Washington. I'll say so. Thank you very, 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 very much.
Okay. Gail, have you got questions? Give them a shuffle. This is totally random. I don't know what the questions are. I don't know who's going to get them. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read out a question. I'm going to name a name. You only get 30 seconds. Think fast. Talk in bullet points. Get right to the point. Okay. Should we legalize marijuana? Kevin Modis.
The issue with legalization of marijuana that doctors and other people don't take into account is that marijuana is highly psychologically addictive. If you wonder why people who are using marijuana quite a bit wake up at 9 a.m. and take a hit, it's because there's other issues than just physical addiction. And we need to take that into consideration as we take care of our young and we take care of our population so they can be happy, healthy, and productive. Issues of whether you're going to use it at end of life are legitimate issues if you're using it for end of life, not because your back hurts, not because you're feeling a little tired.
Thank you. Brent Roske, the Keystone Oil Pipeline, do we build it or not?
Yes, we should legalize marijuana. Keystone Pipeline, I think Ms. Grimes is running for Senate right now, has a lot of great points. She says the environmental concerns have been addressed. She wants to put it through. She's done a lot more research on this than I have. I'm on the fence on this. I serve on the Producers Guild Green Council. So should we approve it or not? I'm going to lean with her and say yes, but I know that a lot of my environmental friends are not satisfied yet, so I don't have a strong answer for you.
Okay. Thank you. Lily Gilani, which technologies would you prepare to use to combat the worst drought in California history?
Which technologies? I'm sorry.
Which technologies to overcome the drought that we are experiencing right now in California?
Well, I believe that water is important, and we need to address that issue. Technologies that are available right now, we need to look at basically wind technologies that will bring water to California, and other technologies that are dissemination is probably what Elon was mentioning, my colleague here. But this is something that
Thank you.
we need to address.
Okay, Marianne Williamson, healthcare reform. Where do we go from here?
I was very disappointed when the president did not take a stand for universal health insurance like all other advanced democracies have. It makes me sick that multinational corporations are calling the shots rather than the people of the United States of America. We have the situation that we have now because clearly the health insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies dictated what they would allow. Therefore, what's important to me is more than anything that we face the fact that getting money out of politics is the great moral challenge of our generation. So the pharmaceutical companies, oil companies, and so forth are not determining the bottom line.
Wendy Grohl, campaign finance reform. What should we do?
I'm proud as a city council member, one of the things I did was lead the effort on campaign finance reform, making sure that anyone who was a commissioner could not fundraise, making sure that lobbyists could not give, and making sure that we were transparent. Similarly, when the Citizens United decision came down, Bill de Blasio, who was the public advocate in New York and is now, of course, the mayor of New York, I was the city controller, worked very hard to go across the country and not only speak out against it, but more importantly, go to corporations and say, we want you to voluntarily not do this and to be much more transparent, and work with some people we have here with the League of Women Voters who've done a great job. It's a critical part of getting money out of politics.
Michael Shapiro. We have a big VA facility close by. What can we do to help the veterans who are homeless?
Wow, I've been working with Veterans Affairs for 46 years now. I was a young staffer to the Veterans Affairs Committee when I was 18. I think that it takes two things. Most of our problems can best be financed, problem solving can best be financed by the federal government, but it has to be run on a local basis. What servicemen suffer from with homelessness in LA isn't necessarily San Bernardino, isn't necessarily Ohio, isn't necessarily Indiana. We have to make sure that we address it on a local issue and spend the money to do it.
Thank you. Okay, Lily Galani, what do we do about immigration reform? Did we already have her? I'm so sorry.
On immigration reform, I can address
that
probably better than...
Okay. Let's give that one to Mark Matthew Hurd.
Thank you for the question. This might not be the most popular answer, but I'm going to give it because I believe in it. I believe we need amnesty. I think we need people who have been here over 10 years to become citizens and pay taxes. I was married to a Colombian wife, and it was horrible when we were dating. I see what these people go through. I'm at UCLA campaigning. I see students who have been here since the age of 3, and they're not even citizens. What the hell is up with that? Well, send me to Washington. Pick up that phone. Thank you.
Okay, Zain Obaji, tax reform. What are you going to do?
I've heard a lot of interesting ideas from a flat tax, but what's not working, what has to change, is the Mitt Romney is paying 14.5%, and even the president paying at 19%, whereas a person coming straight out of school, here in Southern California is going to pay at least 20%, probably 25, 30%. We need to come up with a flat, fair tax.
David Knuth, cybersecurity. What are you going to do about it?
Oh, that's tough. I think the most important thing we can do when it comes to cybersecurity is to empower the federal government and to make sure that we persuade those in Congress who, not everybody lives in the beautiful Silicon Beach that we have here. Not everybody knows and is familiar with the perils of what's going on in cyberspace. I have worked in the tech industry. I can teach them, and I will persuade them.
Vince Flaherty, is increasing bipartisanship important, and if so, how will you go about doing it?
Well, I don't think it's bipartisanship. That's the red and blue political machine, the purple gang, as I call them. I think we need multi-partisanship. We need to form a coalition of Democrats, Republicans, Tea Partiers, yes, Democrats, Tea Partiers, and all people who wish to make the USA a safer and freer place to live.
Thank you. Barbara Mulvaney, defense and diplomacy. What should be our priorities?
There's a hole in the floor right here. That's defense or diplomacy right there. It's a perfect example of defense and diplomacy I think of with the Middle East, and particularly Iran right now. Defense and diplomacy are both extremely important, and diplomacy in that we need to work extremely hard to normalize the relationship with Iran, but we have to do it strategically and make sure that we take into consideration the security of Israel and the security of the region.
Okay.
I want to talk more.
Alan Carr.
Please.
Alan, if and when you go to Congress, how will you stand your ground and not be swayed by the corruption that's been the norm here in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I've never been one to follow blindly the lead of anybody else. And I'm a candidate who has a track record of serving my country, serving it overseas, and serving here in our communities to keep Americans safe. When I go to Washington, I'm going to do what I believe needs to be done, and I'm going to reach across the aisle, and I'm going to fashion real solutions with my colleagues in Washington. And if my party leadership in Washington, D.C. doesn't like it, too bad for them. I'm going to do it anyway because that's what our country desperately needs, bipartisanship and real solutions for our future.
Tom Fox. Tom, the federal budget, do we need to balance it? And if so, how will you do it?
We do need to balance it. Right now, we're paying an extraordinary amount of money in just the interest payments on the national debt, and that's going to go up incrementally as soon as the interest rates go up. We do it by cutting, we do it by taxes, we do it by innovation, but we have to do it. We have to get a budget that's controllable and one that we can be proud of. But by be proud of, what I really mean is we need to look at our defense spending. We're spending 4% of GDP right now on defense spending, and we need to cut that out and take a look and...
Okay. Christy Holmes, education, how can we fix our schools?
Well, I think we're 47th in the nation right now for spending on our students. So we have a long way to go. California is supposed to be a leader, and we are not. So there are a lot of different programs, grassroots programs. My son's school, Wonderland, actually is a great program to follow, which has a lot of parental involvement, which is hard to get in a lot of the poorer areas of the city. So I have a ton of ideas. I'm a social worker, but I don't think I have time to talk about it. So thank you.
Okay. All right, Ted Lieu. Ted, here is the West Side question, traffic. What are we going to do about it?
We absolutely need more funding for our transportation projects. I would support anything to get people out of their cars into mass transportation. When Measure R came through, I was one of the legislators that helped craft it in the legislature. I got more funding for light rail and also light rail for the Green Line going to LAX. Very honored to have been endorsed by former Secretary of Transportation Norm Mineta for my work on transportation issues.
Matt Miller. Should there be special tax breaks to keep movie and television production here in Los Angeles and the rest of California?
Should we say the beginning of it again?
Should there be any special tax breaks to keep TV and movie production here in California?
Yes. I believe that the movie industry and the entertainment industry has not done a good enough job making its case in Washington and in the nation. So I think it starts with recovering the tax subsidies and things that were done at the local level. But I think at the federal level, the industry needs to do a much better job making the case that there's a lot of theft going on right now in our biggest export industry. I believe, this is something to say in a temple, that we need a kind of Eighth Commandment coalition, thou shalt not steal, as a way to begin to make progress in fighting back against the theft that affects the industry.
Okay, now who did I forget? I skipped over somebody. Where do you stand on net neutrality?
Net neutrality, keep the government out of it. It's pretty easy. I relate with the Libertarian candidate a lot on these issues. A lot of these issues are local issues where our future congressmen shouldn't be getting involved. Common Core with education, the states develop it. Now we found the feds are getting involved with it. It's complicating it. It's not a good thing. Sometimes the congressman should just support local leaders and not get involved and just focus on overarching issues. Emergency preparedness. FEMA just came out with a budget. We should be focused on their priorities. We have earthquakes. We have fires in Malibu. We should be helping in that way and not involving ourselves in these local issues.
Okay, that was Michael Ian Sachs. Okay, we're halfway through. Everybody who's in the front row, sit in the back row. Everybody's in the back row, come on up to the front. I am describing this as the wild card round. This will be unpredictable. I'm going to give each candidate 30 seconds to respond to something that's been said so far, maybe to ask another question, another candidate a question. Maybe you'd like to offer up a brand new policy proposal that we haven't heard yet. Maybe you'd like to tell us something surprising about yourself. Maybe you'd like to tell a joke. You have 30 seconds. It's up to you, really.
I want to go a little bit longer on transportation, because this community is more impacted probably than any other part of the city of Los Angeles in this region. Because how long does it take us to get to the 405 from here? Oh, an hour. Very proud to have been a large supporter of Measure R and Measure J. And this summer, the Congress is going to consider the Surface Transportation Bill, an important bill that is going to determine how much money we get. I want to make sure that we get our fair share of resources. We have a community that is more negatively impacted than anywhere else, and it's about the balance and making sure that we have the transportation dollars for a seamless public transportation system that all of us can enjoy.
Thank you.
30 seconds is quick.
I know. 30 seconds is terribly short. It's just the way it is. Vince Flaherty.
Vince.
Over here.
Vince.
I've identified 434 areas in dire need of reform over the past few years, in dire need of reform. I've separated it into 20 categories, A for agriculture, to W for water. If you go to my website, Vote for Vince, that's vote for, using the numeral 4, vince.us, as in United States. Please take a look at them. I'd love to see if you have any questions. I'd love to hear what your answers to these problems would be. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Zain Obaji.
You know, we hear folks talk about transportation, for example, but somebody up here, and Ted, I'm just dishing this to you because you're going to have to deal with it in November probably, but you know, he fought for the high-speed rail because the Fed gave us $2 billion for the high-speed rail, so California is dumping in $60 to $80 billion into the high-speed rail that you can catch from Lancaster. Now, wouldn't it be great if we had even $30 billion to dump into local rail rather than this high-speed rail that we don't really need? It would help our air quality. It would reduce traffic.
Lily Galani.
Thank you, Zane. I agree with you. I don't think we need to put more money, more taxpayer money, which I consider our sacred funds, into the high-speed rail that's going to cost $70 billion. And it's going to cost about $350 per ticket to go there. It's cheaper to fly to San Francisco, and we don't really need to put $70 billion of taxpayer money into the high-speed rail. Special interests are pushing for that, and I don't believe they should have limitless access. Special interests should not have limitless access to public funds.
Mark Matthew Hurd.
Okay, I don't know what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk. First of all, money in politics. These guys are full of it. Come on, they're all taking all this money and saying they want money out of politics. I've worked on 100 campaigns. I see these guys tear checks up. You don't have to take money in politics. If you want money out of politics, guess what? You're the control valve. Turn it off. All right? So let's just cut a knife through that. Transportation, come on, who isn't for that? You guys, we're spending too much money in foreign aid. We got to cut our defense budget and bring those dollars home and do the nation building here at home. $85 billion is going to Afghanistan next year, and the Democrats and Republicans are co-signing the BS. Now pick up that phone.
Marianne Williamson.
It's not easy to amend the U.S. Constitution, nor should it be. But it took a constitutional amendment to abolish slavery. It took a constitutional amendment to give women the right to vote. And it will take a constitutional amendment to outlaw the undue influence of money on American politics. We need a constitutional amendment to outlaw the undue influence of money, to establish that corporations do not have the rights of personhood, and to get those lobbyists out of our offices. Until then, thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Modis.
At the end of this forum, some people will quietly walk up to me and talk about how they've gotten sick from microwave radiation from wireless. They'll say, My friend, she was very sick. She used a cell phone a lot. She got a brain tumor and died. Or she'd be like the guy who came up to me and said, when I use a cell phone, I get a nosebleed. Rather than wait till the end, can you please stand up and raise your hand so people can see that people are getting sick and suffering from this technology? Please stand up, or raise your hand if you don't want to stand up.
Okay. All right.
We need to do something
Ted
about
Lieu.
this.
Microphone is right there.
I'd like to talk about immigration reform. We need comprehensive immigration reform. Not only will it jumpstart the economy, it's the humane thing to do. And I was very proud in California to have supported and voted for the DREAM Act, signed into law. Very honored to have supported for the Trust Act, signed into law. And last year, out of my committee, we passed the bill that allows dreamers to become lawyers. One reason I'm running for Congress is we need America to do what California has done.
Michael Shapiro.
I mentioned this in my opening remarks. It's really not incumbent on us, any of us, to run for office and be good congressmen. It's incumbent upon you as citizens to do more than organize and gather every 2 or 4 years to express yourselves. You have to be vigilant citizens all the time, every day. These people will tell you anything to get elected. I'm serious about that. You have to decide for yourselves what you're passionate about, what you care about.
Okay, let's hear what Michael Ian Sachs has to say to get elected.
Well, continuing on the money theme, well, the Supreme Court decided that money is free speech. Hard to get your arms around that one. It's tough to interpret the law sometimes. It's very confusing. What are the two-party system going to do about it? They love the decision. They're going to raise more money than they ever have. All we can do is try to make it more transparent. OpenSecrets.org. You can look there and see who's giving what to who. They don't trumpet who they're raising money from, but they're getting a lot of money. We got to look to third parties to try and solve this.
Elan Carr.
Every time I prosecute a 19-year-old kid and send him away for being in a gang and for doing terrible things for 20 years or 50 years of life, it breaks my heart. Education is a huge part of my campaign. I'm a product of a public school education, high school and college, and I know public school can work. What if we had schools that nurture our kids, after-school programs, job training, safe classrooms, teachers who are paid more, and teachers who are accountable for their performance? That's what we need because we are failing our most precious resource, our kids. And it's immoral to continue as we are. We have to fix our schools. That's what we have to do as Americans.
Barbara Mulvaney.
One of the issues that we're all going to face in the next term is health care. And I just want to share something with you. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I was flown out of Baghdad with breast cancer, and I got a mastectomy. I went back to Baghdad, and then I came back and I did chemo. But what happened was my insurance was cut off because I left the State Department. And with the Affordable Care Act, I had the problem with the pre-existing condition. But the reason I tell you this is that I will be your advocate on health care issues. I unfortunately know it from the inside out.
Thank you. David Knuth.
This should be not only the golden age of education, but it should be the golden state of education, and it is neither. I have sat next to people when they were not provided support along the way as young people in this community. I've also been on the other side working with the Fulfillment Fund here in LAUSD, and I've seen what can happen and how you can protect young people when they do have the support that the federal government can provide. It's not the total solution, but it needs to partner with local organizations that can make a difference in young people's lives in this community to make sure they don't end up sitting in a courtroom. Thank you.
Matt Miller.
I'm going to tag team Marianne on money and politics. When I worked in the Clinton White House, Al Gore said in a meeting something I'll never forget. Until we do campaign finance reform, we will never do health care reform right. And we didn't. I have a plan. Constitutional amendment is one thing. It will take years, and it shouldn't distract us in the meantime from things we can do now. Lawrence Lessig has endorsed my plan that would ban legislators from raising money from the industries and special interests they regulate. It is crazy. It would also provide public financing through a voucher scheme that would get every citizen $100 a year to put into the system. We need to get money out.
Brent Roske.
I was creative director at NBC for 9 years, and the second original idea I'd like to do, if you elect me to Congress, I'm going to bring a TV crew with me. So you can be with me at every meeting. I think that people have a right to know who's fighting for themselves and who's fighting for their constituency. It's real transparency in Congress, and I've heard a lot of people say get the money out of politics. I got a check sent from me last week from a retired senator, and I put it in a frame. So,
Christy Holmes.
I'll go with immigration reform. I was a lover of the DREAM Act. I thought, what a great idea. I've worked with a lot of the kids who were raised here, brought here when they were very young. However, we're not really getting to the core issue, and social workers love core issues. The problem is we've got a 1,700-mile border with 50 million people on the other side who make $2 a day. What are we going to do about that? That's the problem.
Okay. We are now rounding third and heading towards home. We are now going to have the final statements. I'm sorry, did we forget you? I'm sorry.
I've got to talk.
My error. Take it away.
Tom Fox here, the forgotten one. Many kids are going to be graduating from high school in the next few weeks, and many of those kids don't have a remembrance of the United States not being at war. I am passionate that we don't go to war for choice any longer. I would propose that we put a tax on the American people, being a gas tax and a sales tax, whenever we go into war. So every time we purchase something, we feel it. So we're not disengaged. The people who serve us, the servicemen, their families are not disengaged. We should be committed as well. Thanks.
Okay. Final statements. I think we're actually doing pretty well on time. We have 90 seconds each, and we will start with Matt Miller.
Thank you. I'd love everyone's vote, but let me speak to the Democrats in the room in particular. I think there's a question about who can bring the change we know we need. And we all know things need to be shaken up in Washington if we're going to get the kind of results on climate change, on the economy, on jobs, on our schools, on wages. And the question is, which model of leader at this point is likely to be most effective in bringing the change we need to Washington? You have two basic choices, I think, on this stage. One is the more traditional public servant career politician, and I honor their service, and that's one model. I don't believe that's the model that will be most effective in shaking things up and driving the change we need. You need to send someone to Washington who can stand toe-to-toe with the Paul Ryans of the Republican Party and move a common-sense progressive agenda back to the center of the national conversation. The only way that will happen is somebody with a different set of life experience and skills than just being in government locally or statewide. I believe the combination of White House experience that I have, the policy chops and reputation for national thought leadership, the leadership on education, business experience, and frankly in the national media, best positions me to be an effective champion for our district and also advancing the progressive cause in the years ahead. Thank you.
Brent Roske.
So to recap, I'm going to give you my third original idea. The first one, Congressional District Council. You remember that one, the mini House of Representatives? Second idea, filming in the Capitol, being there for every meeting. The third original idea is just as simple. Once a week, Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m., I'd go to the steps of the Capitol and I'd give a speech on American patriotism. Now, why do that? When I was at NBC, people would start their trips to New York by coming to see the Today Show. That would be their big, exciting welcome to New York. Wouldn't it be fun if field trips and tourists from all over the world would say, hey, it's Wednesday at 7, let's go see that California congressman give his speech. To me, it's all about transparency. It's all about accessibility in government. So, Congressional District Council, getting money out of politics, giving speeches on the steps of the Capitol, and filming my time in office. But since this is in closing, I think we should just have a round of applause for all the amazing people up on stage right now. I'm Brent Roske. I'm running for Congress. Thank you.
Wendy Gruhl.
Thank you. What a great day. Democracy at its best to have 18 candidates up here and all of you particularly invested in what happens in this community. This is an important seat. Whether it's about environment, whether it's about having a business friendly and a place where we can create good jobs, whether it's about making sure we're not stuck in traffic. And most of all, it's also about important for our future. I have an almost 11-year-old kid. Goes to public school, I went to public school. The educational system is so critically important. We need universal preschool. Teachers will tell you in kindergarten that they know which kids have not gone to preschool. Only 30% have access to preschool, and they're behind from day one. Kamala Harris, who's been a great supporter of mine, who's our Attorney General, says they know in third grade which kids are going to drop out and which ones are not, based on that they cannot read at a third grade level. To me, that you need someone who's going to be the fighter and the warrior on all of these issues. And I'm proud of not only having local and national and working for the Clinton administration, but more importantly, having a small business, working in an entertainment industry and keeping those jobs here in this region. Because Henry Waxman was a fighter and is a fighter, and he stood up to the special interests. I've done that in my jobs and in my life, and that's what my parents taught me, was to stand up for those that don't have a voice. Send me to Washington so I can be the leader and be the person who's going to fight for each of you and bring the resources, and more importantly, be the voice for this district, for this community, and for the future of this country. Thank you very, very much.
Kevin Modis.
You know, I've been talking a lot about the wireless issue, but it's an important issue because we've got young children who are now being focused on. They're developing head, neck, face, and eye tumors. We got women developing breast cancer because they don't realize they're microwaving their breasts every time they use a cell phone. It is no exaggeration to say that this is a quiet, sophisticated, high-tech holocaust going on right under our nose. And the question is, what are the Jews going to do about this holocaust? What are you going to do about this holocaust? I can tell you I'm going to do something, and I guarantee it. When you vote for me, you're voting for a social worker. You're voting for an environmental health advocate. You're voting for a business person. You're voting for somebody who's in now the new two-party system. There's one party of people who take special interest money and meet their needs, and the other party who are trying to serve the public's needs and are public servants. I seek to be a public servant, and frankly, I want to be the leader of that small and dwindling party. But I need you to vote for me. And I need you to do something different, because if you keep voting for the same people, coming from the same systems, doing the same things, we're going to get the same result that we all agree up here is not enough. It's time we hold the people responsible, special interest groups, like the telecommunications industry. And if you wonder how this stuff is still going on, the new FCC chairman is the former main lobbyist of the wireless industry and the CEO of the former CEO of the Wireless Trade Organization. That's how it goes on.
Thank you. Zain Obaji.
Thanks again for all paying attention and the like. I'd like to tell you a story in closing. Down in Redondo Beach, if you've ever been there, there's a huge, ugly monstrosity of a power plant, and it sits there right there on the ocean side. And it pollutes directly into the community because, as we know, in Southern California, the ocean winds blow inwards towards the land. And a few years back, about 3 years ago, the California Energy Commission issued a ruling that power plants could no longer use once-through cooling, that is, pulling in ocean water to cool the plant and pushing it back out because it destroys biodiversity. And so this plant was going to have to shut down in 2020. And it sought reapplication for a new permit because it's legal non-conforming there. And so I got involved with this issue, and I fought alongside, as part of my campaign 2 years ago, with the residents of Redondo Beach to urge the city council there not to issue a new power plant, because it does not make sense in this day and age to have a power plant that pollutes into the community on the ocean, especially where this power plant had been operating at 5% capacity. 5% capacity, that tells you it's not needed. And there was a need study eventually done by the city council that found that even with Santa Onofre shut down, a nuclear power plant down in San Diego, it still is not necessary to the grid. And true leadership says, even though I'm running for federal office, there's an important local issue here, and I will get involved and I will fight for what's right here. And not so true leadership, which we have, none of these candidates have ever done anything about the Redondo Beach power plant.
Okay, David Knuth.
Thank you all again for being here. I think it's amazing that something can be announced and all of you show up and all the candidates show up. It's a wonderful display of democracy. I, like you, have been very frustrated over the last 15 years with not only politics, but the people I see running at every level of government and for every position. What I'd like to ask you is, so often people say to me after a forum, thank you for running, I'm glad you're part of this process, I like what you have to say, look forward to what you're doing in the future and seeing what happens. What I want you to do is to, if you're thinking that at all, if you're looking up here and you're seeing more traditional, sort of safer candidates, I want you to think about what's frustrated you. I want you to think about what you hoped you could vote for when you've been frustrated, when you've looked at a ballot. If those criteria don't include having held political office for a certain amount of time, if those criteria do not include a certain chronological age, if they are somebody who's passionate, somebody who's got a good head, a good heart, is willing to work hard for you, to listen to you, and also to lead, if those are the things that are important to you, and that's what you've been looking for, I'm telling you that that candidate is standing talking to you right now. And I'm asking you to follow through on what you've been looking for. And come June and in November, cast a vote for David Knuth. Thank you.
Ted Lieu.
In addition to crafting legislation, a member of Congress is also responsible for constituent casework. And I've always had a passion for doing that. I live in a district. My children go to public school in a district. I've always wanted to help people in my district. A few weeks ago, we learned that a woman lost her health insurance and she needed emergency cancer surgery. So we contacted her. We contacted her health insurance that same day. Within a few days, we got the health insurance restored. She had her cancer surgery. Last year, I requested, fought for, and helped secure $2 million in state funding to Simon Wiesenthal Center's Museum of Tolerance to help them complete the Anne Frank exhibit. Because of my work on local constituent issues, I'm very honored to have been endorsed by Los Angeles City Council members Paul Koretz, Mike Bonin, and Bill Rosendahl. Because of my work on environmental issues and democratic values up and down this state for years, honored to have been endorsed by the California Democratic Party. Because of my ability to work across the aisle to get things done, very honored that today, the Los Angeles Daily News and the Daily Breeze endorsed me as their top pick for this congressional seat. I'd be deeply honored to have you support me as your top pick. You can catch me on Twitter, on Facebook, or on tedlieu.com. Thank you so much.
Marianne Williamson.
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need same old, same old. We don't live in California because we do same old, same old. There are 18 candidates here today, but two categories of conversation. One is those who would perpetuate the status quo. The other is those who would disrupt the status quo. There are a lot of people here today, as far as I can see, who would be really good, decent congresspeople. We need more than that. We need a game changer. I am someone who knows about how Californians can start a new conversation and it becomes a trend within 5 years. We need to do more than change around the deck chairs on the Titanic. We need to turn this ship around. We need to address that the United States is in crisis. We need to get out of our denial about that. And we need to do what our founders told us to do, to be vigilant. I am someone who has worked up close and personal with people whose lives were in crisis for the last 30 years. And I know that in order to turn crisis into opportunity, you have to do more than just change some things on the outside. You have to engage in a deeper conversation. But I'm known for more than that. From everybody, my endorsements have come from everyone from former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm to Congressman Alan Grayson, people who are known for getting things done, who feel that what my conversation is about, and the fact that I have a deeper understanding of the suffering that is caused by the reckless and irresponsible behavior of the U.S. government in a system that has become a legalized system of bribery and corruption. We need to do more than just come in as technicians and fight them. How are you going to fight them when they still, with their money, control the whole thing? No, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get down. We need to slam it. Vote for me, please, on June 3rd.
Michael Ian Sachs.
Well, I'd like to commend all the candidates. It's great being with you. Like Mr. Hall said in his orientation email, we should salute anyone who's willing to subject themselves to this process. I love politics, so I love this. And I know, I'm strange. I said I'm different. And I watch a lot of C-SPAN. I know my wife's rolling her eyes. She has to deal with that. So I watch the hearings. I'm well informed about it. And I'm energized, and I have the passion. I've been here a long time. There's so many people I care about here. I love my country. I love this area. I believe I have the passion and energy to represent this district. There's only two of us who are going to be going forward to November. So what's it going to be? Is it going to be the Democrat and the Republican? We've heard that ideological debate many times. We could beat that dead horse again. Democrats are registered 4-1 in this district. The result would be we'd know what would happen there. Is it going to be two Democrats? Is that democracy? How are they going to differentiate themselves? No, that's not the way to go. We have a chance here to be special. This district is special. We need a third-party candidate to be that second person. There's many articulate and intelligent third-party candidates up there. We see them all. And you got the bald guy with the green tie. You got options. Look into them. You don't have to go the same way. We need to try something different.
Vince Flaherty.
We have a unique opportunity here in California due to our open primary, which gives me a chance to win and gives you a chance to vote for the representative of your choice based not upon their party affiliation or spiritual affiliation or religious persuasion, but upon the issues and positions of the candidate. Before you cast your vote, one of the things you ought to ask yourself is am I voting, could I be voting for a bought candidate who won't dare to say anything that will, or might say something, but in the end, at the last minute, will they dare to do anything that will disrupt the business of an international corporation that has no allegiance to America and makes no decisions based upon what's good for Americans? Before you vote, ask if you're voting along party lines or voting for the person you believe would be the best representative from District 33 to the federal government, and not the other way around. I have the determination, the dedication, the education, the discipline to get the business of government functioning properly, the business of government. Go to my website, voteforvince.us. That's vote for, using the numeral 4, vince.us, as in United States. And take a look at the 434 things, the 50 main points that we've got to fix. Thank you so much for your attention.
Lily Galani.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I want to thank you for being here. Your presence ensures it is actually the lifeblood of our democracy. So thank you again for being here, and thank you, candidates. The issue here is if we want 40 more years of the same. Democrats, 10 of whom are included in the candidates up here, want to say yes. And I have to tell you that I was here 35 years ago, and I've seen things we've gone from best to worst in almost everything. So we don't really want more of the same. If we want more of the same, vote the way you would vote as a Democrat. But if you want to give a chance to businesses, if you want to give a chance to innovation, you have to vote a different way this time. I know what it takes. I've been a business owner and I've been a lawyer, and I tell you what we need to do is to improve our education. We need a world-class education that gives us a world-class workforce. And government needs to invest in entrepreneurship, to facilitate entrepreneurship, to provide tax incentives for businesses, to allow things to go from conception to market to innovation to create jobs. And most importantly, I will champion the cause of small businesses because they hire 54% of Americans, and they shouldn't have to be bogged down with payroll taxes and having to borrow from line of credit to pay the IRS. We need to change that, and that has to stop. Thank you so much.
Elon Carr.
I want to close by, in addition to, first of all, thanking you and my colleagues, I want to close by making some commitments to you. If I'm your congressman, I'm going to fight first and foremost to keep you safe. Because the job of our leaders is to keep our communities and our fellow citizens safe. That's what I've been doing for my entire career, protecting Americans from threats overseas and threats on our streets. But keeping people safe means a lot more than simply law enforcement. We all know that we can't handcuff our way out of a crime problem. We need to be talking about schools. And so my second commitment to you is I'm going to make central to everything I do in Washington fixing our schools, better schools that nurture our most precious asset, and making the investment that is the most important investment we can make in the future of our country, investing in our kids and investing in their potential to self-actualize and not to be dragged into lives of violence on the streets through gangs. And then when they graduate from school, they need work. And so we need to have a tax and regulatory system that brings businesses back to California, that doesn't drive them away to Nevada and to Texas and to Arizona and to Louisiana, but brings businesses here so that when our kids graduate from school, they can begin careers and they can find jobs, the kind of opportunities our economy provided a decade or two ago and doesn't provide today. And finally, healthcare. My wife's a doctor and she practices in the 33rd District. And we all know that universal coverage is important, but it needs to work for all Americans. And that's another commitment I make to you. Elon Carr for Congress, thank you so much for being here and sharing this day with us.
Christy Holmes.
Okay, so I'm skipping what I was going to say before because everyone's covering it repeatedly. But social workers are used to working with little or no budget. We're used to having to innovate, figure it out on the ground as we go. So I can bring that to Congress. I teach a class right now of MSW students who are working on policy and research, and they're doing proposals over the whole semester of what they're going to do in the community with $100,000. So this is why I can't raise $1 million and spend it on postcards. I know what $1 million can do for our communities. How will I make relationships in Congress? When one of us gets there, we have to work with people. There are 5 social workers in the House, and there are 2 senators who are social workers. There's also a Congressional Social Work Caucus with about 70, give or take, people in it. So that is a good group to go enter as far as being able to work together bipartisan. Regarding women in Congress, the NFL instituted the Rooney Rule, which requires teams to interview minority candidates for head coach jobs. We've gone from 6% to 22% without trying very hard. It just took getting them the interview. Finally, I'll make this quick. I support the legalization of recreational marijuana as an economic imperative and social justice issue. This is a social worker talking, remember? We've already legalized medicinal use here in California. Removing prohibition will bring this state somewhere more than $1 billion in revenue, as Colorado is projecting in their first fiscal year. Thank you, Christy Holmes.
Mark Matthew Hurd.
Once again, thank you for coming and putting up with all this good information. Solid stuff, I know. I'm running as a libertarian because I want to see a change in direction. I think Marianne gets it as well. This country needs a course correction. It needs an interruption. And it's not going to happen from a Republican. and it's not going to happen from a Democrat. And if you people don't know that, then I can't help you. But Marianne can. She wrote a book about it. I really do like Marianne. I like that you guys are out here tonight, and I like what she stands for. I'm a libertarian. We're a little bit different. I'm kind of a hard-nosed guy. I don't like listening to a bunch of BS. I'll come out and say what I feel. And I think that's what we need in government. We need people like Ron Paul, people who have integrity, and I do have experience. Just look at my website, voteherd.com. I made it simple just for you. And go home to your families and donate that money to a charity, would you? Push the donate button on my campaign site. It says donate it to charity. Turn off the spigot. You guys are better than that. Thank you.
Michael Shapiro.
Rather than cutting through the line. President Truman once said that he needed a one-arm economist. His chief of staff didn't know what he meant. His secretary didn't know what he meant. They looked through the Rolodex. They had found no one-arm economist. And when the Treasury Secretary came for an afternoon meeting, he said, "Mr. President, they tell me you need a one-arm economist. Why are you asking for a one-arm economist?" He said, "I'm sick and tired of having people come in here. I ask them a question. They say, on one hand, you can do this, and on the other hand, you can do that." We've heard a lot of very good ideas. We've not heard too many ideas on implementation. That's the name of the game, implementation. I believe that we need a single-payer health care plan and that we need to continue to fight to improve Obamacare to get it there. I believe that we need a living wage, not a minimum wage, to help build our economy. I believe that we need equal work for equal pay. And if we do all of those things and we commit another stimulus package to our infrastructure, we will get this economy back on track. We'll get the jobs America needs. And then the last thing I'm going to do is when you employ me, I'm going to employ you. The 33rd can be the most powerful district in America. It's got the brain power and the money. And we'll coalesce it for America. And then I'll make all of you one promise. You won't have to wait 40 years again to run for office.
Tom Fox.
I want my country back. I lost it somewhere along the line, and I want it back. So let me ask you, what kind of country do you want to live in? I want the country that has the promise of equal opportunity for all, the one that mets out mercy with its justice. I want a country that is the beacon for goodness throughout the world. Where did that country go? Am I out of my mind to think that we can't strive for that, what we used to be, what we were taught we were? Where has it gone? It's gone by the way of our democracy, which is now shared between the Democrats and the Republicans, but they're all funded by big money, big business, so that their agenda is that paramount over the American people. I want my country back. I'm running as an independent because I want my country back. Because I want this money out of politics. I want to have a bright future for all the little boys and little girls who are being born today. They're graduating from high school next week. I want my country back. So join me. Let's take it back.
Barbara Mulvaney.
I'd just like to thank you. It's so great to look out over your faces, and I'm humbled to be here with you. It's one of the great things of our democracy to have debates like this. I agree so much with everything that everyone has said. But the one thing that troubles me is the amount of money in the campaign. And I want to offer a simple solution. We have great candidates here. I'd like to propose the under 200,000 rule. You look around up here and you pick who you like the best that has raised under 200,000, because there is a price tag for every dollar the people has taken. It takes away from your voice. We have the best district in the world. We have the smartest people. We have the richest people. We don't need all this money to come in from other places and people coming in from other places to tell us what we need. And I would like to, of course, propose myself as one of those candidates. I'm poor. I'm a dedicated public servant. I have done everything from county attorney, state attorney, DA. All of it is crisis of policy. Every time there is a case, it is a crisis of policy. Genocide is a crisis of geopolitical policy. These are all... I want to go to Washington to represent you on policy. Thank you. My name is Barbara Mulvaney.
Thank you, candidates. May the odds be ever in your favor. Thank you, University Synagogue. Thank you, TJ. And thanks, as always, to the wonderful people of Brentwood.